Hi, everybody. I just had a great podcast interview with fellow naturopathic doctor. Her name's Dr. Erin Kinney. She's on Instagram. I think it's Dr. Erin Kinney is her handle, if memory serves. But if you look her up, or her website, I think is erinkinney.com or drerinkinney.com. I'll have her contact information in the show notes of my podcast episode when that's up in the next few weeks. But I had a chat with her today, and it was a really great chat. We talked about a lot of different things, a lot of topics related to complex chronic illness. But one of the things that she mentioned, it was one of the most simple things I've heard, but it just kind of struck me as like, well, that's really, really good advice. So it's something you'll hear about in the podcast episode if you decide to listen to it. In case you're not familiar, my podcast is called the Overcoming Chronic Illness Podcast, available on all the major and a bunch of the minor podcast hosting platforms. I also post them on all the episodes on my YouTube channel if you prefer to see us speaking in person, watching us instead of just listening to us talking about things. But one of the things we were talking about was how it's really important to address the over-excitation or kind of over-utilization of our nervous systems. We just have such busy, fast-paced lives these days. There's information flying at us all the time. There's a lot of responsibilities that are on our shoulders. There's just unfortunately ongoing stressors in the forms of chemicals and electromagnetic radiation and things like that. So we have a lot of things flying at our systems that our bodies have to try to buffer that as best as possible, but it's a lot for the nervous system to handle. And if we're kind of constantly in some degree of fight or flight, in that sympathetic mode, not getting into that rest and digest, calming parasympathetic mode as much, then our systems can really burn out. And Dr. Kinney was talking about how important it is to get adequate rest. We can't just be go, go, go all the time and not have adequate rest to compensate for that. We can do that. We can get away with it for years, decades in some cases, but at some point we may need to pay the piper. Sure, some people might be genetically rigged up so that they could do it for 80 years before they pay the piper, 90 years, maybe they can go to 100, but I think for a lot of us at a certain point, we'll hit a certain burnout point if we don't start to get a bit more balance in our lives. So the really simple thing, I think simple yet brilliant, kind of brilliant in its simplicity thing that Dr. Kinney mentioned was that one of the things she recommends to her patients, if I'm understanding what she said correctly, is she'll say, you don't have to meditate. You don't have to do deep breathing. You don't have to get into anything like that. If you can, if you want to, and it's great to do that, but kind of just setting the bar really low. She advises her patients to just set a timer for 10 minutes and just lie down and take a rest. If you fall asleep, that's okay, but just lie down and take a rest. Listen to music if you want to, but don't do anything. You're not on your phone, you're not reading a book, like you're just lying there doing nothing. And that sends a signal to the body saying like, this is what it's like to rest, and it's okay to rest, and it's not bedtime. So where she was saying, and I couldn't agree more in terms of what I've seen with many of my patients, and quite frankly, I've been guilty of this myself. I still am guilty of this myself on many days. You get up in the morning and it's just go, getting the kids ready, rushing to get to work, busy day at work, get home, stuff with the kids, hopefully get some exercise in there, and then, maybe a little bit of downtime, and then it's bedtime. So it can be just kind of that things are really busy, and those are all really good things. I just described a typical day in my life, and they're all really, really good things, but there needs to be that rest as well. Otherwise, we're just kind of, burning through we're just kind of running on adrenaline, we're running on cortisol all day, and Dr. Kinney very eloquently spoke about the importance of kind of managing our cortisol better. She had nice analogies around kind of like our cortisol bank and whatnot. I recommend, check out her content on her social media. By all means, she talks about these things a lot, and which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk to her on my podcast, or wait for the episode to come out, whatever you prefer. But she was saying that we really do need to get let our bodies know it's okay to rest. And I can speak from my own experience talking to patients, saying like, yeah, do deep breathing, 5 minutes of deep breathing a day, or 10 minutes of mindfulness, or this or that. And like it's just kind of a high bar to set for some folks. I think there's sort of a bit of a intimidation factor around oh, am I going to become a meditator? Not that there's a taboo around that. It's more like, oh, it kind of sounds like hard work the first couple times you do it. It's not like it's the easiest thing. It's not like we have this meditation reflex that automatically kicks in the first time we do it. But just lying there doing nothing, it doesn't get much easier than that. Now, some type A folks that are listening might say, that sounds really, really hard. Ask me to climb Mount Everest, like anything but lying there and doing nothing. But just I think she makes a really good point that just letting our bodies rest and just saying to the body, hey, it's okay to rest. You can let the adrenaline levels drop down. You can let the cortisol levels drop down. Get into that parasympathetic mode. And just like the folks who do wind up, picking up a meditation practice or doing deep breathing or some type of breath work or some mindfulness or whatever it happens to be, a lot of those folks will say once they start doing it regularly, they're like, how did I ever not do this? Like, this is something that I really, really enjoy. Kind of on the other end of the spectrum, I know some of you may have seen I posted videos about cold plunging. It's something that I've been just kind of obsessed with for the last several months. I do it every day now. I don't miss a day because I'm just like, I just feel better. If I had maybe one day in the last few weeks where I didn't do one, I was just too rushed in the morning, and it was fine. Like I functioned just fine. It was like I missed it. It was something where I was like, I just don't have quite as much, pep, quite as much skip in my step, at least for the first few hours of my day. I was like, I missed that cold plunge. So by allowing your body to get into that resting state, then doing that, practicing it for say, a few weeks, like 10 minutes in the middle of the day, just let the body relax, get into that parasympathetic state. Don't have your mind, think. If you're lying there thinking about things, so be it. But just that's okay. But just letting the body not be doing stuff for a period of time, I think it's a really valuable bit of advice and be a valuable exercise to try. Now, I'm thinking of kind of my own life where, like, where would I fit that in? Because it's something that's giving me pause to think about. Maybe the reason that it kind of struck a chord with me is that I'm kind of recognizing that's probably something that I should consider doing. So I'm going to brainstorm on how I can make that happen and maybe give that a try. And if I do take the plunge myself, then I will post a video and let folks know how that's going. So again, it's Dr. Erin Kinney. Definitely recommend her content. I've been following her on Instagram for a while. She's on Facebook as well. I don't really spend as much time on Facebook, but I'm sure the Meta folks don't mind because they own Instagram anyway, so I'm sure they're happy. Anyways, in all seriousness, I really recommend checking out her content. She actually has her own podcast as well. I believe it's called the Dr. Kinney Show, or maybe the Dr. Erin Kinney Show. She has I think 130 some odd episodes, so I've been meaning to take a look at some of those, but she's had a lot of really interesting topics and guests on from what I can tell, so I recommend checking out her content. And again, stay tuned for the interview that I had with her. So if you're listening to this and you have any comments about I've done a similar type of practice, or I found that taking some time in the middle of my day to be helpful taking some time in the middle of my day to just kind of have some quiet time, whether it's deep breathing, just lying there, just listening to music, whatnot, please feel free to post a comment in the comment section, letting us know if that's been something that's impactful in your life. And if you have any questions on this topic or anything else, just post in the comment section below, and I'll do my best to answer as soon as I can.